This week we are giving advice on how to come out. If you're watching this video, I assume that you have decided to come out and you're looking for some advice. And the advice I have for you is that there are some people it's good to come out to, and some people it's not such a great idea. And I think it's sort of a bad idea to come out to coworkers, employers, teachers, or if you have really judgmental parents. And all of these people could have really negatively impact your life if you do come out to them, so you should think carefully before coming out to these people, whether you want to or not. But it's a good idea to come out to friends, accepting family members, they have a really accepting vibe to them, and especially to potential romantic partners. That's not one you want to come out to later in the relationship. That's never a good idea. The first time you come out, it would be wisest to do so with a friend. That way, if you somehow mess up, it's not as bad as if this were with a family member or something like that. And friends are, since they're not related to you, they can understand things from a more objective perspective. I find I've generally had positive responses coming out to friends, though I did it in the wrong way. I first found asexuality.org. I realized I was ace, and just then and there I blurted it out to my friends. And although they all became accepting over time, at first I got the same "you're oppressed" kind of nonsense, and that was really damaging to my self-esteem. I wasn't prepared for all the negative reactions, and that's why it's good for you to be prepared that some people will not be accepting. But if you have the right materials and the right research and the right knowledge, you can turn a negative coming out reaction into a positive one, and I will help you. Jenny talked about having confidence, and I know as much as anyone that you are going to be nervous as heck. Not only the first time you come out, but every other time. You never know 100% what someone's reaction is going to be, so you're going to be nervous, but it's best if you come out at least pretending to be confident. Then the person you're talking to will realize that what you're saying is valid instead of, something that doesn't exist, because that's the point you want to get across, that asexuality is a legitimate sexual orientation, that you are asexual, that this is 1% of the population. There's a community out there for us. There's been research written about us. Even Kinsey, the famous sex researcher, he wrote that we were the X, the people who we weren't even a zero. We just didn't have any sexual desire, rather attraction whatsoever. And so this is a valid thing. There are even animals in nature that are asexual. And I don't mean bacteria. I mean there are actually gerbils, for instance. There are certain gerbils that aren't sexually attracted to other gerbils. They, help out raising other gerbils, kids and whatnot, but they don't have sex. Also, it's a good idea, as others have said in their videos, to keep it simple. You don't want to overwhelm people with too many ideas at one time. You might be a homoromantic, biromantic, panromantic, asexual. You might also be transgendered, but if you're coming out as ace, it's a good idea to just do that one step at a time. There's always time in the future for other things, especially depending on reactions, but one thing at a time. Just lay it out basically, talk about how it's valid, protect your confidence, and also relate it to the other person. Don't just monologue, but involve them in your conversation and tell them how important they are in your life, that you want to share this information with them. And I think then they'll realize that, yeah, this is important, this is something that I should be listening to. And maybe I don't understand it, but I can accept this because I accept that other person. They accept you. My best advice for coming out is to make sure you think about questions people might ask and have answers prepared. In the text box, I'll link you to a site I found very useful, particularly the Asexual Responses to Common Statements and Questions Made by Sexual section. I'm going to use my friend, Mr. Whale here, to inform you about the top 3 responses, 3 most common responses that I personally get whenever I come out. Mr. Whale says the number 1 question that I get asked whenever I come out is, do you masturbate? I get asked this question every single time, without exception. Even complete strangers ask me this. Once my friend Sam introduced me to some other friends of his, and we got on the topic of relationships, and I really casually kind of mentioned, oh, I'm asexual. And this girl, who is a complete stranger to me, asks, do you masturbate? For some reason, people get this idea that it's an acceptable question to ask asexuals, even though it's not acceptable under any other circumstances. It's really something very personal. So I tell people, no, I don't masturbate, but some asexuals do. That asexuality has to do with lacking sexual attraction. I also happen to lack sexual desire, but the actual definition has to do with the lack of sexual attraction. Okay, now Mr. Whale says the second most common response I get is, oh no, you're repressed. Alas, it's a very common one, and when I first started coming out, I was flabbergasted by this response. I thought it was rude for people to be so judgmental. They don't know what I feel and what I experience. How could they say such a thing? But now I've come to understand that asexuality is a new term, and people sometimes don't understand it, and people are confused by things they don't understand. So although maybe it's not the best thing in the world, it does make sense that when people are threatened by something new, that they lash out against it. In order to make them feel more comfortable, when people tell me this, I try to respond by saying, at this point in my life, this is what I honestly feel to be true. I'm not trying to force a label on myself because I'm scared of sex. I don't mind when other people have sex, it's just that it's something I don't have any desire for. I think of it like skiing. Some people know they want to ski even if they haven't tried it yet. And for me, I have absolutely no desire to ski, no attraction to the idea of skiing, and even if I did try it, I'm sure it would end with me failing epically. It's the same thing with sex. If by some chance one day it turns out I'm not asexual, then I'm open to that idea as well. But for now, this is how I identify, and it's an important part of myself that I want to share with you about. And I think in that way you'll kind of diminish people's automatically judgmental reactions. They'll kind of see how important it is to you, and you can start moving the conversation to a more positive and accepting track. This last one is a bit too big to fit in the whale, so I'll just write it on the screen. The third most common response I get is, you just haven't met the right person yet, or you're still too young to know for sure. And to this response, I think it's quite silly, so I respond in a rather silly way. It's generally a response directed towards heterosexuals, as I found other sexual minorities to be far more accepting when I come out, though this is not always the case for everyone. But I say to such people, does that mean you haven't met the right member of the opposite gender sex to realize that maybe you're actually homosexual? Does that mean one day you'll grow out of your heterosexuality? Think about it from that point of view. It's really, we do live in a very heteronormative world, so I think it's just silly to say things like, you know, it's a phase, or you haven't met the right person. Sorry this video is so long. I hope it helps, and I'll see you all next week.